Misery Monday. I am a child. I don't want to work.
The 9-to-5 schedule in general is crazy.
I'm literally 6 months into my first corporate job and I already want to quit.
Gen Z is lazy, entitled, and never communicating properly. They're destroying the American dream. At least that's what you would think if you had formed your worldview from people on LinkedIn with business management degrees. It's not actually shocking that Gen Z is getting dunked on for their approach to the workplace, because every generation that's entered the workforce gets ridiculed. It's just normal. What is surprising is how Gen Z is actually changing Americans' approach to work. And this change in approach from grind culture to something new is actually upsetting employers so much they're discriminating against them.
Gen Z's losing their job left and right. Career advisory platform Intelligence found that 60% of companies have fired their Gen Z employees just months after hiring them after graduation.
Some business leaders think that Gen Z is so ill-prepared to work full-time that they just won't hire them.
ResumeBuilder.com actually interviewed more than 1,300 managers. About 75% of them say Gen Z is just too hard to work with.
So employers are punishing Gen Z and young millennials for essentially realizing that they will never afford a home, let alone a family.
I love going to work and working full-time and still not being able to afford a house.
Because of these realizations by young people, we've sparked a new conversation around labor, something that America is actually pretty familiar with. So with all of those things in mind, are Zoomers actually destroying the American dream? The first way Gen Z sparked this conversation around labor was with a term called quiet quitting, which rose to prominence in 2022 on TikTok following the lockdowns.
I recently learned about this term called quiet quitting, where you're not outright quitting your job, but you're quitting the idea of going above and beyond. You're still performing your duties, but you're no longer subscribing to the hustle culture mentality that work has to be your life. The reality is it's not, and your worth as a person is not defined by your labor.
In case the aesthetic vibe there kind of threw you off, quiet quitting is just doing what you're supposed to, and that's it. You're not staying late, you're not on call, and you don't do anything that doesn't result in more pay. Employers treated quiet quitting as if it was worse than the real thing, but it's not. It's doing the job you were assigned.
When an employee only does what's required, it's called quiet quitting. No, it's called doing your job. If I'm supposed to go above and beyond, then so should my pay.
Okay, but with that explanation out of the way, we can move on and talk about how this isn't new. Employers and neoliberal economists have called it all sorts of things, like disengaged employment. They've called it work to rule or Italian striking. And no, that doesn't mean dealing with your boss like you're in The Sopranos. So with a little history lesson, now you understand that Gen Z is not alone. All generations have found some way to get back at employers. And it makes sense that it's right now because momentum's been on the rise.
Felt amazing going on strike this week.
We are at the Starbucks at Overland Park, and today we are on strike.
It was just a matter of time after the amazing economic mind of Ronald Reagan that we would end up here. People are overworked, underpaid, and tired of watching billionaires send phallic-shaped rockets into space while they die in a warehouse to a tornado.
A lawsuit is expected to be filed against Amazon this week after last month's tornado tragedy. He was a delivery driver killed when the tornado hit the facility by requiring him to work when management knew conditions were unsafe after tornado warnings went out. McEwen and 5 others were killed when a wall of the large facility collapsed on top of them.
The newest international astronauts, the crew of New Shepard. Jeff, what was it like? Was everything you imagined?
I'm going to answer that question, but just real quick.
Please.
I want to thank every Amazon employee and every Amazon customer because you guys paid for all of this.
God, that Jeff Bezos guy is just so cool. You know what's even worse about all of this is that when employees do go above and beyond, they often just get fired because an employer would rather fire you than pay you more when you come asking.
Could you pay me in advance?
You're fired.
This tiny bit of slack in the leash allowed a lot of workers to recognize their worth. It is now 2025, a few years post-lockdown, and quiet quitting is not as popular as it was. But the momentum is still there, and Zoomers are coining new terms like bare minimum Monday or mediocre Mondays to keep that momentum up. And these focused attacks have actually made employers start noticing, so much so that they're thinking of implementing policies surrounding this. Because a survey actually showed that 75% of workers experience something called Sunday scaries, which I'll let this TikTok explain for you.
What? I wanted to remind you that you have a meeting at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow. God, why do you always show up at 3 o'clock on a Sunday? You might get fired, and then your family would leave you, and then everyone would probably just die. after that. Are you done? Yeah, no, I also wanted to tell you that you are...
It has been known for decades that the 40-hour, 5-day work week is unproductive. Workers work better for less hours. They do not do well working this much. I'm not super hopeful because they value profits over people, but at least it's being talked about. Lazy girl jobs are another trend I discovered recently, but they're not only for girls, so hold on. A lazy girl job is essentially quiet quitting, but your employer knows you're doing it and is completely okay with it. Lazy girl jobs are those jobs where you get maybe 1 call a day, or have to send out 1 or 2 emails, or maybe a few invoices. The reason I'm bringing up this trend at all is because of those good employers. For example, an office might need a receptionist even if they only answer a phone once a day because they have to be there, and their other employees can't. And before you go and tell me, but Carter, maybe they're probably lying to their boss or something else. A lot of these have like 1 million views, these TikToks. Do you not think that their employer would know?
Lazy girl jobs are my fave. All I do is copy and paste the same email. Take 3 to 4 calls a day. Take 30-minute breaks 8 times a day and get a nice salary.
Honestly, a lot of jobs could be made lazy jobs because technology was specifically designed to do so. But you know what has happened instead? Employers give you technology and expect you to do double the work for the same pay. Oh boy, I sure do love corporate America.
I'm a Gen Z in corporate. Of course, I'm not going to that meeting that's during my lunchtime. Sorry, take it off the schedule. I'm a Gen Z in corporate. Of course, the screen is hitting the keyboard at 5 o'clock on the dot. Sorry. I'm a Gen Z in corporate. What do you mean? What is a mental health day? Figure it out because I'm taking 1 a month. Sorry.
A lot of times it's not even employers because employers just want to make as much money and would rather have you go home early if they didn't need you. It's middle managers, which in all honesty can be in a tough spot. It's called being a class trader. They don't own the business and don't do a lot of the work, so they have to make you busy.
People say, I am the best boss. They go, God, we've never worked in a place like this before. You're hilarious. And you get the best out of us.
Their whole job is managing. So they'll just make up things for you to do so that they can manage you. Grind culture has so many people wanting to be employee of the month because they're definitely going to be the CEO that has caused a large issue we are facing today, which makes me happy to know that Gen Z is at least somewhat pushing back against that with the idea of lazy girl jobs or bare minimum Mondays or even quiet quitting. Those aren't the only ways with fancy terms or not. They're also looking to organize, which is why we saw a lot of Starbucks and now Amazon also looking for labor action. According to Resume Lab, 84% of Gen Z consider themselves job hoppers, and nearly a quarter of young millennials also consider themselves job hoppers. And on top of that, a lot of them won't even recommend their employer to their friends. This isn't surprising to me. As a young millennial, I recognized something a while ago which has made me have a hot take. We should stop doing 2 weeks notice. I feel like this is the biggest thing that employers or corporate America has brainwashed us into doing. Why should I give a company a 2 weeks notice when I'm going to leave when they don't give me any notice? They just pack my bags and tell me to leave.
Go now and never return.
They don't care if it ruins my life or sometimes even give me any pay. They will fight tooth and nail to justify not giving me unemployment. With that in mind, why should I give them the courtesy of training my replacement or giving them my projects finished? They're not going to do anything for me. Why should I do anything for them? Obviously, some exceptions exist to this, a family business, or maybe a career that you're really passionate about pursuing and need a reference. But in most cases, 2 week notice is something that corporate America has just convinced us is the right thing to do. Unfortunately, Gen Z is still giving notices. I am happy though that they've spit in this whole trend of we're a family that corporations tried.
I need you to work late this evening. Has something come up? We have a lot of work on our plate and it needs to get done. I can prioritize it first thing tomorrow morning. What happened to being a team player? We're like a family here. Family? Yes, so start treating me like it. Okay, so I'll need you to stay until 10 p.m. tonight. Nah, do it yourself. I've got to do. And if you ask me again to work late for free because we are consistently understaffed, then I'll block you because you're annoying me. Excuse me? Well, I'm bored of talking to you now. Toodaloo, sis.
It's also not entirely truthful to give this to Gen Z or young millennials, because this erosion in company loyalty started back in the 90s. Companies were already gutting pensions, outsourcing jobs, and treating workers as if they were disposable. The only thing that's actually changed since the 90s is, well, 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, and a pandemic, which had a 9/11 pretty much every day for a month. It's been commonly told in America for over 100 years that if you stick with the company will take care of you. The whole corporate ladder nonsense that you hear today. The only problem is American workers from the beginning recognized that this was a lie.
By the way, Susan, you told Sasha that we were a family yesterday and you fired her. I'm confused.
I didn't say that.
From the very beginning, companies exploited employees, promising safety, growth, or security, all while never delivering, oftentimes even harming them in the process. Let's take the term redneck, for example. Most people associate that with country folk, or people who drive lifted trucks but have small wieners. The reality is, it stems from coal miners who were in a union striking, and that strike led to them literally dying at the hands of their company and the US government. Their labor action was a thing called the Battle of Blair Mountain, which is now immortalized as one of the strong actions of American labor. So yeah, this whole idea of company loyalty leading to being rewarded has been bullshit. If a company really wants to keep its employees, it will give them better wages and better benefits. Oftentimes, the only way you can get these is by uniting together. And this is something that Gen Z and young millennials have figured out.
And we're gonna stand there on this pavement and continue to march and send a message to Amazon that we're gonna be here until they treat these workers with dignity and respect.
Starting a union or organizing in America is very hard. Companies and the government both incentivize you not to do this. So it's refreshing to see Gen Z at least start labor action with things like quiet quitting or bare minimum Mondays or whatever you want to call it. And lazy girl jobs are an example of a world that we could have.
Bring somebody in that slams shut their laptop at 5 o'clock. You're introducing a cancer into your culture.
Up until this point, I feel like you should understand that nothing I've said is actually unique to Gen Z or young people in general. And unfortunately, I did clickbait you with the title or thumbnail. I can already see commenters saying some dumb shit like this. All jokes aside though, this is just a natural point for labor to end up at. What do you expect when wages are stagnant, housing prices are insane, and the dominant labor force is those who lived through the 2008 financial crisis?
The signs were everywhere, but now it's official, we are in a recession.
What's crazy, that is instead of acknowledging these problems, conservatives and neoliberal talking heads will blame laziness or wokeness as to the reason employees are acting this way.
You do all 5 steps of your skincare routine and make your coffee. Your new straws make you happy. You used to hate Mondays, but now you love them. You started doing this thing called Bare Minimum Monday to change your relationship to the beginning of the week, and it's working. You put on your favorite jacket, it was your grandfather's. Instead of starting work right away, you do a few more things for yourself. It's Bare Minimum Monday, remember?
Just a question. Why does one have to go into work late on Monday because of self-care rituals? Isn't it possible that you could get up earlier and whatever your self-care plan is, and get that done before work? It's what very successful people have been doing for decades upon decades upon decades. Rock stars, people that are really killing it. Not the miserable types that love to hang out on TikTok and go, oh, I'm so miserable. Somebody make me feel better about being miserable.
I find extreme irony in somebody to talk about ethics or laziness in the workplace when your job is quite literally even easier than mine. You just hire people to do it for you. They build your set, write your script, shoot your video, and probably have some Zoomer set up your computer.
So Marissa Joe describes Bare Minimum Monday as a way to quell the work pressure and hold herself accountable, completing the least amount of work necessary to get by that day. Here's a thought. How about we change our life to where we don't have to come up with strategies to do the least amount possible to make it through?
Unfortunately, Ken Coleman is not alone. A lot of these old finance talk show style people who came to YouTube are just ironic. Look at this, for example.
False prophets, and I know she's not preaching the gospel, but someone who is trying to influence someone else, meaning they are sharing their message, they typically do so when they're perpetuating something that's untrue. They don't offer you a lie that's based in 100% of falsehood, because you would reject it, right? It would be like like dropping a frog in a pot of boiling water. If it was that false, you jump right out.
Liz Wheeler here of OANN, the One American News Network, is telling you about Marissa Joe, a TikToker who came up with the term Bare Minimum Mondays.
Bare Minimum Monday is where I take the pressure off and only hold myself accountable to completing the least amount of work necessary to get by that day.
She claims that Marissa Joe is lying. The only problem is, in that entire clip, did you ever hear her explain what the lie was? No, because she doesn't. She just tells you that she's lying and that you need God or something in your life.
This young girl builds her lie basically on the fact that a lot of people in their jobs don't have the right priorities. They're not prioritizing their family first and their faith first and their country first. They're prioritizing just plain old money for all of the greedy reasons that people throughout human history have always pursued money.
Honestly, in every dictionary, they should just put a picture of her and Ken Coleman right next to the word irony to really drive home what it means. This video actually has so many ironic things, but I'm going to focus on one, and that is her talking about false prophets, all while she has a book with her face on it behind her.
They're prioritizing just plain old money.
Speaking of which, let's see how Liz Wheeler describes her book Tipping Points. We're not going to lie, cheat, or steal to win like our opponents do, Wheeler tells readers. We're not going to twist the truth, exploit minorities, and malign the character of decent men and women like our opponents do. We don't have to because we're right. That's why she just lied about Marissa Joe and then said she was lying, but never told you about what. I mean, if this video is anything to go by, I imagine that she doesn't actually say anything in this book at all. Honestly, this book is probably just boomer bait for people who hate young left people. Speaking of bait, let's talk about my favorite shark.
Quiet quitting, a temporary pandemic hangover, byproduct of low unemployment, or a long-term thing?
You know, Shep, the economy's changing. Obviously, we're going into a whole new metric where some people work at home, some people work at distance, some people go back to the office. Now, some ideas are bad ideas, and some ideas are stupid ideas, but very rarely can you combine both. And that's what we have here. This is the dumbest idea I've ever heard in launching a career.
Kevin O'Leary is a Canadian talking about American work ethic and American problems as if he is American. What is it with Canadians sending their worst? I mean, we have Tom McDonald, Jordan Peterson, and Ted Cruz. It's like Satan is just shitting down the United States. I honestly don't know what the plan is either for a lot of these conservative losers when their audience dies in the next 5 years of old age or some preventable disease because they thought electing this guy was a good idea. The relentless onslaught by traditional media against Gen Z's labor practices has actually caused them to be more relentless in their labor action. The problem with propaganda against Gen Z is that they're also really good at propaganda, which means that this labor movement has kind of left Gen Z and is now all generations fighting for the same things. This relentless pressure from Gen Z probably caused Genocide Joe to cave and actually attend a union strike. This marks the first time a president has ever gone to a picket line. Also, let's not pretend like he just couldn't have been lost looking for bingo or something. Joe Biden isn't necessarily the most coherent person ever. All right, let's rewind for a second. If you remember, at the beginning of this video, we were trying to determine whether or not Gen Z was destroying the American dream. And to be honest, I think they are, but they're trying to build a better dream in its place. Zoomers and other workers are not willing to make sacrifices for companies that do not care about them. They're not lazy. They're just rebelling against bad employers, questioning the media, and trying to fix a broken system. And let's be honest for a second. Gen X was called the slacker generation. Before they got mad at young people, they were quite literally those same young people that people got mad at. And boomers were riding the high of World War II, leaving most of the world without manufacturing. America was the only one left standing with the ability to make shit. This made America very rich, and boomers in turn became very rich. Obviously not all of them, because we still had, I don't know, segregation. White boomers were able to buy land, and that's how they got to where they are. Not because they worked harder than Gen Z. The real issue isn't that Gen Z is bad at working at all. It's that they stopped pretending like work is the only thing that matters in life. This realization that a life outside of work exists upsets those in power, and it is antithetical to the system that America America was built on.
I have a very high standard of living and like a very low work ethic, and so I'm just like constantly caught in between like wanting to make money but also not wanting to do anything to actually make money.
Obviously, this labor action and labor realization does not apply to all Zoomers, because some Zoomers are falling in line and perpetuating a broken system because they think that they can beat the game. I actually have an entire video about this that I just released about scammers and masculinity and its targeting of young men. Maybe this will be something that's new to you, but we no longer live in a world that is scarce. No matter how much people tell you that, I refuse to believe it's true. When companies throw away billions or millions of pounds of food, enough to feed entire continents, all to maintain prices, I will refuse to believe that some things are scarce, especially those things that are essential for human life. We should not be able to put a price on things that are required to survive. And I'm happy that younger generations are recognizing it. And you know what? If Gen Z is going against this system by making TikToks that praise Xi Jinping, so be it. If that's what forces labor change, I'm all for it. And they're not destroying the American dream, they're just fixing it. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Bye-bye.